Hello, gang! Welcome to 5D Fungus. Today in this episode, we are talking about species sequencing. So what is species sequencing? Well, we all know that fungus is one of the most ultimate recyclers out there in this world. Species sequencing is just really taking that to the next level, right? So it's basically using the same substrate more than once, right? So in my case, I use mostly sugarcane bagasso, and so these blocks all gave shiitakes. Some of them gave shiitakes more than once. Some of them have multiple flushes. Some of them didn't. But ideally, they have multiple flushes, and once they're done giving the shiitakes, there's still material there, right? And so we can use that material again. And so we'll break these blocks up, pulverize it, and then re-sterilize it for the use of, in this case, blue oysters. I've done reshis. All right, there's plenty of ways you can do it, and you can sequence this out multiple times. I've just done it twice, and then I give it to my worms. But you could do it from shiitake to, say, reishi, maybe oyster, and then maybe a king stropharia, right? You can kind of keep going down the line with the same substrate and just break it down more and more and more and more. I did not come up with species sequencing. Mr. Paul Stamets, it's where I heard it from. Some reasons to do that would be maybe it's hard for you to get a hold of your substrate. For me personally, that was the exact reason why I got into it, is because I kind of ran out of my substrate source, so I was forced to do it. Maybe you chip your substrate. Granted, breaking up these blocks does take a little bit of time, but it's less time than chipping. Another reason is, since I'm using this at the end of the day for worms, it just breaks up that substrate that much more, so the worms have an easier time just mowing through there. So there's many reasons to species sequence. If you're paying for your substrate, rather than getting, say, 10% of your substrate mass coming off in the form of mushrooms, you're going to do that twice, so you're going to get more like 20%. All right, so it's just really utilizing your substrate as much as you possibly can. So these are all spent shiitake blocks. We're going to break these things up now, pulverize them as much as we possibly can, and then we're going to mix them with some gypsum and re-moisturize them, and then sterilize them for oysters. So basically, the first step to species sequencing is to break up your blocks. So you can see there's mycelium still in there, holding on to the substrate, but this one's drier. But there's obviously a lot of substrate still there, right? So that's what we're going to use. Some of this stuff I've waited for a long time before I've used it, and so it's really dry. So, you know, when I'm breaking it up, I like to use a face mask, dust mask, to just kind of keep my lungs clean. So. Cool. So now it's broken up, you can see that there's definitely a lot of usable substrate here. You can tell that, well, I don't know if you can tell, but I can tell that the bagasso is a little more broken down than before, but still plenty of substrate here to use for the oyster mycelium to take advantage of. Pretty awesome that we can do this. And so at this point, we're going to want to add gypsum into the mix, calcium sulfate to be more specific, because you don't want to go get builder's gypsum because that has silica and all a bunch of stuff that you don't want in there. You want pure mineral calcium sulfate. Very important for mushroom growth. We add it to pretty much all our substrate. But also especially important in this because some people say it affects pH, some people say it doesn't, but I've definitely noticed when I added a little more calcium sulfate to my mix, of species sequence blocks, they grew better than some of my first rounds. So definitely add that in there. And then now would be your time to supplement if you want to. So if you want to add an organic bran or rice hulls or something like that, now would be the time to do that. I'm going to use grain spawn to inoculate this, so I don't necessarily need to supplement, although I could if I wanted to. So now would be your time. And then we're going to add water. All right, water, very important. But it's very important to get that amount of water just right. You don't want too much water. You never want too much water, but especially with this, because these were fruit blocks. I've got to go down and pull blocks out of the cooker that were cooking from the morning, so I have room to put these in, so I won't be coming back here to put water in here for a couple hours. But yeah, I'll show you that shortly. Hey gang, I'm back. I just had to go to the lab, pull out the blocks out of the pressure cooker from this morning's run so that I'd have room to load up this afternoon's run. So now we're gonna moisturize. A note on that, if you're ever gonna leave your substrate, leave it dry, all right? If you have to mix all your stuff in, leave it dry, all right? Don't add water and then leave it for hours, because water makes life, right? And you want a certain life to live. So even though you're gonna sterilize it, it's better to add water right before you actually sterilize. So that's what we're gonna do now, is add the water, all right? So, ta-ding. So we're just gonna do a couple layers of this, right? So I'm just gonna add water all over the top, give it a good soaking, and then turn it, and then do that again, then turn it and do it again. All right, so give a nice even spray of water over the top. Then we're just gonna mix it up so we can get access to the dry stuff underneath. Then we're gonna spray the top again, soak it in. Give it a good soaking, and then again, mix it up. So now I can start to feel kind of the bottom part where the water drops through is getting wet, and the top. So I'm gonna mix it, and then I'm gonna give it one more light spray, 3 in total. So as you go, kind of check it and feel it. And there's definitely a bit of water in there. So, you know, we're gonna do this to it in a sec. And this is how you kind of really can kind of get the water into it. So there's definitely water there. I'm gonna spray the top just a little bit. It's like, because the blocks, there was some blocks that were wet, it's got more water than I'm used to. I usually give it like 3 or 4 sprays. You know what? So after checking, the water's close enough where I'm gonna mix it in real good now. And then if we wanna add more water after that, we can. But it's a lot easier to add water than it is to pull it out, right? So yeah. So I'm gonna show you this little technique of mixing it in. A couple things this does is it kind of helps for the water to like even out and get in. And then it also helps break up some of those further chunks. So basically I'm just grabbing it and just rubbing it down like that, right? Kind of, you know, one of those things you do when you're really excited. But just take it, and then that helps to kind of even out the water. It's just a nice way to mix it in. So I'm gonna go through this now. Yes, it takes a little longer, but to me it's better than just flopping it around. You can see this is really a great way so you can see, you know, if you squeeze it good and it holds itself together, then you know there's water in there, right? But if you squeeze it and a whole bunch of water pours out, you're way too wet. So one way, if you've over wetted it, one way to bring it back is add something dry, either supplementation that's dry or break into another block, or if you have any dry substrate you want to add in, something dry will help pull the moisture in. I think this is going to be good. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to mix the entire thing like that. Cool, so I did that little grindy mix in. This side closer to the water, I'd say is probably good, but the majority of the rest of it is not. So we're gonna add a little more water. Usually after I'm just gonna do my best to add it to the zones that were a little drier. And again, you wanna be careful at this stage. Like, I have a problem of like, hey, I'm close, and then overwatering, which is what I'm about to do talking to you guys. So you want to be careful of that. So I'm going to do another little, just a real quick little mix in. So after the 4th round of adding water, mixing it back in, I feel like we're there. Probably to the untrained person, you might grab this and be like, that's not wet enough to grow mushrooms. But really, it is, all right? The way you know, grab a handful, give it a good squeeze, and you should hear a little sponginess. Hopefully you can hear that off my mic. And then if you really squeeze it hard, you can get a little bit of water to come out, just a little bit, all right? Not much. So we're there. The last thing I'm going to do is that side's a little more wet than this side, so I'm going to do a big mix to mix it all through. And when you do this big mix, you're just kind of mixing. You don't need to do the grind thing. You're going to have chunks at the end of the day, and that's okay. So I like to make a big mountain and then clear a workspace where I'll put my blocks. Cool. Now that we got our moisture just right, it is time to bag, all right? So these are mushroom bags specifically made for the mushroom industry. They come in a bunch of different sizes, widths, depths, all that good stuff. They also come with different size filter patches. So honestly, I've done this twice now, and I've bought these small bags because I save a little bit of money. At the end of the day, get the big bag. Paul Stamets, Fungi Perfecta, they make a big old bag that you can make a giant block with. Just do that. It's the way to go. These small bags, whatever, they're not bad, but I definitely use them for certain things. So I use the small bags for oysters and the big ones for shiitake if I ever sterilize. It's good to have a scoop. All right, so this is an old ethyl alcohol thing. I've cut the size, so everything is sized to the scoop. So I know what it is. So from this bag size, 1 without pushing it in, full scoop, 2 without pushing it in, 3, and then I do just a little bit more where it comes up to the line of the handle there. So for each of you, that's going to be different. But usually once you get it in there, a way to check, you can see if this was it packed, it'd be too much. But if I can press it down, you've got enough space in there for them to grow. You're going to seal at the top. You want extra space in there so it can draw more oxygen. You can't fill this thing to the tip top, all right? So this is about max on this bag, given a little thing there. You can buy bigger bags that are better, and their filter patch is way higher. So that's the bag, all right? So we're going to fill these. Hopefully we hit 24, because that's the amount that can fit in my cooker. So here we go, bagging it up. So we're all bagged up. We got 23 and a little bit extra. I'm gonna cook everything, obviously. And so now I'm just gonna show you how to close this thing. You'll probably see this in some other videos. But so I like to first clean off the lip where you're gonna impact seal it. I find that my impact sealer works a lot better if I don't have like a bunch of debris up there. And kind of tamp it down then do one big fold over and push it down to get the air out and compact, right? If you want to get wild, do a little tamp on the side. And then make sure everything's nice and clean. And then folding towards the filter, I just do one fold and lay that right on top of the filter. And that's it. Wipe the debris off. And then that bad boy goes in the thing. And this is how it's going to set in the cooker, this way down. And that holds it shut so that it doesn't get a whole bunch of moisture from the pressure cooker in it. But it also makes it just a simple way to close it rather than buying special clasps to close it. This has worked for me from the beginning. It works great. And then when it cools, it's also closed. So this, to me, is the best way to close that bag. Cool, gang. So there you have it. I like to pressure cook for 4 hours. Make sure everything's good and clean. And then make sure they're cool, take them in the lab, and inoculate. If you have questions on inoculation, check out our other videos. And yeah, again, I'm going to inoculate this with grain spa. And then I find that they take a little bit longer for the mycelium to grow than normal. So I usually let my blue oysters go about 3, maybe even 4 weeks before I put them in the grow room. But you can just watch them. Thanks for watching. And yeah, stay beautiful. See you on the next level.